$5 million. That was the price of my father's life. I had 24 hours to pay a debt I couldn't even imagine. Or they would start sending me his fingers in a box. I was desperate. I was alone. And then the devil made me an offer. Dante Moretti didn't want my money. He wanted me. He needed a fake fiancé to deceive his enemies, a shield made of flesh and blood. I thought it was just a contract. I thought I could pretend to be the Mafia king's wife without losing my soul. I was so wrong. You are listening to Fate's Gentle Hands, where destiny strikes when you least expect it. Get ready for a dark romance filled with danger, obsession, and a love that cuts like a knife. This is the story of how I became the queen of the underworld. The crystal champagne flutes on my silver tray trembled, rattling against each other like chattering teeth. That was the only sound I could focus on to keep from screaming. My feet were throbbing inside cheap black flats that I had bought from a thrift store 3 years ago. Every step sent a sharp jolt of pain up my calves, a cruel reminder that I had been standing for 6 hours straight without a break. I was invisible here, a ghost in a black vest and white button-down shirt, weaving through a sea of sharks in silk and velvet. This was the annual gala at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, a playground for the filthy rich to pretend they cared about charity while sipping wine that cost more than my father's life. 23 years old. That was how old I was. Most girls my age were out at clubs or studying for finals, or falling in love. Me? I was doing mental math, calculating how many shifts I needed to pick up to stop the loan sharks from taking my father's index finger. $5 million. The number was so large it felt abstract, like a distance to the moon. But the threat was real. The bruise on my arm from where the debt collector grabbed me last week was still fading, turning a sickly yellow under my long sleeves. I hated them. I hated every single person in this room. I hated the way they laughed, heads thrown back, throats exposing diamond necklaces. I hated the smell of their expensive perfumes, a suffocating mix of rose, oud, and entitlement. Focus, Elena. Just focus on the tray. Don't look them in the eye. I turned near the chocolate fountain, aiming for the kitchen to refill the empty glasses. That was when a body blocked my path. It was not an accident. He stood there, legs spread wide, radiating the arrogance of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. Brandon Vane. I knew him. Everyone in the service industry in New York knew him. He was new money, loud money. His father had struck gold in real estate, and Brandon treated the city like his personal brothel. He had greasy blonde hair slicked back with too much product, and his eyes were watery and bloodshot. "Excuse me, sir," I murmured, gripping the tray tighter. My knuckles turned white. I tried to step to the left. He stepped to the left, blocking me again. A cruel smirk played on his lips. "Where are you going in such a rush, sweetheart?" Brandon slurred. His breath smelled of stale scotch and cigars. He reached out, his clammy fingers brushing against my waist. I flinched, the glasses on my tray clinking dangerously. "I need to refill the drinks, sir. Please let me pass." "Come on, drop the act." He leaned in closer, invading my personal space. I could see the pores on his nose. "How much?" I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Excuse me?" "For the night," he said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. He pulled a thick roll of cash from his jacket pocket. I saw $100 bills. "You are a pretty thing. Too pretty to be serving drinks to these boring old fossils. Come up to my suite. I will pay off whatever student loans you have got. Or maybe buy you a dress that does not look like a ragged towel." Heat rushed to my face. It was not a blush of shyness. It was the burning heat of humiliation and rage. I looked around. People were watching. They were not helping. They were watching with amused expressions, like I was a reality show episode. "I am not for sale," I said, my voice low and icy. I looked him dead in the eye. "And my dress is fine. Now move." The smile dropped from his face. Rejection was not something Brandon Vane understood. His eyes narrowed into slits. "You think you are better than me?" he hissed. "You are nothing, just a little waitress." And then he did it. He raised his hand, holding a full glass of heavy red wine. With a deliberate flick of his wrist, he tossed the contents forward. The liquid hit me like a physical slap, cold, wet, sticky. It splashed across my chest, soaking through the thin white shirt instantly, dripping down onto my skirt. The red stain spread like a gunshot wound, shockingly bright against the white fabric. It seeped into my bra, chilling my skin. "Oops," Brandon said loudly. His voice feigned innocence, but his eyes were dancing with malice. "Look at that. You are so clumsy. You spilled it all over yourself." I gasped, the air sucked out of my lungs. The tray slipped from my numb fingers, crashing to the floor. Crystal shattered, shards flew everywhere. Silence, then a giggle. It started with one woman in a gold dress, then a man. Then the whole circle around us erupted into laughter. They were pointing, they were whispering. Look at her, such a mess. Probably trying to get his attention. Gold digger. Pathetic. The words were like stones pelting me from every direction. I stood there shivering, wine dripping from my chin. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear into the floorboards. I felt small. So incredibly small. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, hot and angry, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give them the satisfaction. "Clean it up," Brandon sneered, pointing at the broken glass at my feet. "And pay for my drink." I bent down, my knees shaking. My hand reached for a large shard of glass. I did not care if it cut me. I just wanted to do something, anything, to stop the staring. Suddenly the laughter stopped. It did not taper off. It was cut violently short, as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. A primal instinct, the one that tells a gazelle a lion is nearby, screamed in my brain. I looked up from the floor. The crowd had parted. A wide, empty path had formed through the center of the ballroom, and walking down that path was death itself. He was massive. Over 6 feet 3 inches of pure, terrifying power. He wore a black bespoke suit that fit his broad shoulders so perfectly it looked like a second skin. He did not walk. He prowled. Every step was calculated, silent, and lethal. His face was carved from granite, sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. Gray, cold, empty of mercy. Dante Moretti, the Don, the King of New York. I stopped breathing. Everyone stopped breathing. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause in reverence. Dante did not look at the trembling guests. He did not look at the decorations. He walked straight toward us. No, he walked straight toward me. Brandon, who had been a peacock a moment ago, shrank. He visibly deflated, his face losing all color until he looked like a corpse. "Mr. Moretti," Brandon stammered, his voice cracking. I did not know you were..." Dante did not acknowledge his existence. He stopped right in front of me. I was still crouched on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and smelling of wine. I must have looked pathetic, a stained, broken thing, but he did not look at me with disgust. He looked at the red stain on my shirt. His jaw tightened, a muscle feathered in his cheek. It was a micro-expression, gone in a millisecond, but I saw it. Rage. "Stand up," he said. His voice was deep, a dark baritone that vibrated through the floor and straight into my bones. It was not a request, it was a command. I stood up, my legs felt like jelly. I was shaking so hard my teeth wanted to chatter again. Dante reached up and unbuttoned his suit jacket. He shrugged it off his shoulders in one fluid motion. The scent of him hit me, overpowering the smell of the wine. Sandalwood, leather, gunpowder, rain. He draped the heavy jacket over my shoulders. It was warm. It engulfed me, covering the stain, covering my shame. It felt like a shield, a fortress. Then he did something that made my heart stop. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief. He stepped closer, invading my space, but unlike Brandon, I did not want to pull away. I was paralyzed. He raised his hand. His fingers, rough and calloused, brushed against my cheek. He wiped away a drop of wine that had splashed onto my face. His touch was firm, possessive, his gray eyes locked onto mine, trapping me. For a second, the world fell away. It was just me and him, the predator and what? Was I the prey or something else? "You have red on you," he murmured. The way he said it made it sound like he wanted to lick it off. Then the moment broke. He turned his head slowly to look at Brandon. Brandon was shaking so hard I thought he might faint. Dante signaled with 2 fingers. 2 mountains of men, his bodyguards, materialized from the shadows. One of them grabbed Brandon by the neck. The other grabbed a full bottle of champagne from a passing waiter. "Smash it," Dante said. His voice was bored. The bodyguard smashed the bottle onto the tray Brandon was holding. Glass exploded. Shards flew. Brandon screamed as wine and glass cut into his expensive suit and hands. The room was dead silent. Nobody moved. Nobody dared to intervene. Dante looked at Brandon, who was now whimpering on the floor, bleeding and soaked. "You made a mess," Dante said calmly, "and you dirtied my property." "My property?" The words echoed in my head. Before I could process what he meant, Dante turned back to me. He reached down and took my hand. His hand completely swallowed mine. His grip was iron. "Come," he said. He did not wait for an answer. He turned and walked away, pulling me with him. I stumbled, trying to keep up with his long strides, clutching his jacket around my shoulders like a lifeline. We cut through the crowd and people scrambled to get out of our way. They looked at me with fear now, and envy. We walked out of the ballroom, leaving the shattered glass and the shattered man behind. As the automatic doors of the hotel slid open, the humid night air of New York City hit us. A black armored car was waiting at the curb, engine purring. I looked at his back, at the broad shoulders and the white dress shirt. I looked at our joined hands. Between the artificial chill of the air conditioning we just left and the burning heat of Dante's gaze that I could still feel on my skin, I knew my life had just taken a sharp turn. I had walked into the lion's den. And the strangest part? I did not want to leave. "Hello, friends. This is the author speaking. I have a question for you. Where are you listening to this story from? I'm curious to know how far Dante's influence reaches. Please comment the name of your country and city down below to mark your presence. Do not forget to like the video, because Dante gets very angry if you ignore him. And trust me, you do not want to see him angry." The heavy door of the Rolls-Royce slammed shut, sealing me inside. Click. The sound of the automatic locks engaging was soft, but to my ears it sounded like the gate of a prison cell swinging shut. The outside world, the flashing cameras, the cool night air, the freedom was instantly cut off. Inside, the air was thick. It smelled of expensive leather, aged scotch, and the sharp, acrid scent of a lighter being flicked open. I scrambled backward, pressing my spine against the door I had just entered, trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and the monster sitting on the other side of the seat. "Let me out!" I screamed, my voice shrill and panicked. I clawed at the door handle. It was locked tight. "Open this door! You cannot just kidnap me!" Dante Moretti did not even look at me. He sat relaxed, one leg crossed over the other, occupying his space with the ease of a predator in its own den. The flame of his silver lighter danced in the dark, illuminating the sharp angles of his face. He brought the flame to the tip of a cigar, took a long drag, and exhaled a cloud of gray smoke. He ignored my screaming as if I were nothing more than a noisy radio he had tuned out. "Where are you taking me?" I demanded, though my voice was shaking now. The silence from him was more terrifying than any threat. "Answer me!" The car was moving now, gliding through the streets of Manhattan so smoothly I could barely feel the road beneath us. In the front seat, separated by a partition, was the driver. I could only see the back of his head and his eyes in the rearview mirror. Cold, dead eyes set in a face scarred by what looked like a knife wound running from his ear to his jaw. Enzo. That was what Dante had called him. He drove with robotic precision, completely unfazed by the girl hyperventilating in the back seat. Dante finally turned his head. He looked at me through the haze of smoke. "You are loud," he said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "I dislike loud things." "Then let me go," I snapped, though I shrank back when he shifted his weight. "Give me your hand." "What?" "Your hand, Elena, the one that filth touched." I hesitated. Dante did not wait. He reached out, his movement a blur of speed, and snatched my left wrist. His grip was not painful, but it was inescapable. It was a shackle of flesh and bone. He pulled me out of my corner, forcing me to slide across the leather seat until our knees were almost touching. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Dante looked down at my wrist. The skin was red and slightly bruised where Brandon had grabbed me earlier. His jaw tightened. The temperature in the car seemed to drop. He raised his thumb and pressed it hard against the bruise. Ouch! I gasped, trying to pull away. Stay still, he growled. He began to rub his thumb over the mark. Hard, abrasive, as if he were trying to scrub away the memory of another man's touch from my skin. He touched you here and here. Stop it, you are hurting me, I whispered. Better my pain than his touch, Dante murmured, his eyes dark and unfathomable. Do not scream, little bird. You know exactly who I am, and you know that the police in this city do not serve the law. They serve me. My breath hitched. He was right. Everyone knew the Moretti family owned half the precincts in New York. Screaming was useless. Buzz, buzz. My phone vibrated in the pocket of the oversized suit jacket I was still wearing. His jacket. I reached for it instinctively. It was a text from my dad. Elena, where are you? The shift ended an hour ago. Before I could even unlock the screen, a large hand snatched the phone from my grasp. Hey! Dante looked at the screen. A cruel smirk played on his lips. Ah, the father. Mark, isn't it? Lives in that rat-infested building in Queens. Apartment 4B gambler, drinker, terrible with money. Terrible. I went cold. How do you know that? I know everything, Dante said. He did not give the phone back. Instead, he held down the power button. The screen went black. He tossed the device onto the seat between us like it was trash. He is safe for now, as long as you behave. Please, I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by pure terror. My dad has nothing to do with this. I will pay for the suit. I will pay for the trouble. Just let me go home. You are not going home, Elena. The car took a sharp turn. The streetlights outside disappeared, replaced by the harsh fluorescent glow of a tunnel. We were descending. Where are we? I asked, my voice trembling. Home, Dante replied. The car came to a halt. We were in an underground garage, vast and pristine. The walls were concrete, but the floor was polished epoxy. Dozens of luxury cars were parked in rows, but we stopped in a private bay. The door opened. Enzo stood there, his scarred face impassive. We are here, boss, Enzo rumbled. His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. I looked out. We were in the belly of the beast, the Moretti Tower. I had seen this building from afar, a jagged shard of black glass piercing the skyline. I never thought I would be inside it. I did not move. Dante stepped out of the car. He adjusted his cufflinks, then leaned back in, blocking my exit. His massive frame filled the doorway. You have two choices, Dante said softly, leaning in until his lips brushed the shell of my ear. I shivered violently. Option 1. You get out of this car, take the elevator up with me, and we talk. Option 2. You stay in this car, and I send Enzo to pay a visit to apartment 4B in Queens. I hear your father is quite attached to his thumbs. He pulled back, his gray eyes locking onto mine. Choose. The elevator ride was silent, but my ears popped as we shot upward, counting the floors like a countdown to my execution. 50, 60, 70, 80. The doors slid open with a soft chime. I stepped out into a space that cost more than my entire existence. The penthouse was a sprawling expanse of black marble, dark wood, and floor-to-ceiling glass. The entire city of New York lay spread out below us, a glittering grid of lights. It was beautiful, and it was cold, so incredibly cold. Sit, Dante commanded, pointing to a leather sofa in the center of the living room. I sat on the edge of the cushion, my hands clutching his jacket around me. I felt like an intruder, a stain in this pristine world. Dante walked to a bar cart and poured himself a glass of amber liquid. He did not offer me any. He walked over to a glass table and threw a thick manila folder onto it. Thud! The sound echoed in the large room. Open it, he said, taking a sip of his drink. My hands shook as I reached for the folder. I opened it. Photos spilled out. Photos of my father entering a casino. Photos of him at a card table, sweating, eyes manic. And then documents. Promissory notes. Signatures. I scanned the numbers. My stomach dropped to the floor. $5 million, I whispered. No, that is impossible. He said it was 50,000. Your father lies, Dante said, indifferent. He borrowed from the Snake Eyes casino. My casino. He has been losing for 3 years. He borrowed to cover losses, then lost that too. The interest has compounded. I felt bile rise in my throat. 5 million. I could work 10 lifetimes and never pay this back. I do not have this kind of money, I choked out, tears blurring my vision. I have nothing. I know, Dante said. He set his glass down. I do not want your money, Elena. Money is boring. I have enough of it to burn. Then what do you want? He walked around the table and stood in front of me. He looked down, his eyes analyzing me like a specimen. I need a shield. I blinked, confused. A what? The Russo family, Dante explained, as if discussing the weather. They are annoying. They want to merge our families to end a territorial war. They want me to marry their daughter Julia. She is a screeching harpy with the intelligence of a rock. I need them to back off without starting a war. I do not understand, I said. I need a fiancé, Dante said clearly. Someone to show that I am already taken. Someone unconnected to this world so the Russos cannot claim it is a political move. You. My mouth fell open. You want me to pretend to marry you? For 6 months, Dante said. You wear my ring. You live in my house. You attend events on my arm. You smile when I tell you to smile. In exchange, your father's debt is wiped clean. He lives. No, I said immediately. The word flew out of my mouth before I could stop it. No. I will not be your prop. I will not belong to a criminal. I will go to the police. I will tell them about the blackmail. Dante did not get angry. He actually laughed, a dry, humorless sound. The police, he mocked. You still do not get it. He picked up a remote control from the table and pointed it at the massive television screen on the wall. The screen flickered to life. It was a live feed, grainy, black and white. It showed a damp, dark warehouse. In the center of the room, a man was tied to a wooden chair. His head hung low, messy gray hair falling over his face. Dad! I screamed, jumping to my feet. On the screen, a man in a mask stepped forward. He was holding a pair of heavy, rusty pliers. He clamped the pliers onto my father's pinky finger. My father jerked awake, his mouth opening in a silent scream. Stop it! I yelled at Dante, rushing toward him and grabbing his lapels. Stop it, please! Do not hurt him! It is a live feed, Elena, Dante said, his face unmoved. My men are waiting for my signal. If I do not call them in 30 seconds, they take the finger, then the hand, then the arm. On the screen, the masked man tightened his grip. My father thrashed against the ropes. I sobbed, my knees giving out. I collapsed onto the cold marble floor at Dante's feet. My pride, my morals, my defiance, it all shattered. Please, I begged, clutching his pant leg. I will do it. I will do anything. Just tell them to stop. Please. Dante looked down at me. For a moment, I saw a flash of satisfaction in his eyes. He pressed a button on his phone. On the screen, the masked man immediately stepped back and lowered the pliers. Dante turned off the TV. The room fell silent again, save for my jagged sobs. He crouched down so he was eye level with me. He reached out and tilted my chin up, forcing me to look at him. His thumb brushed away a tear on my cheek, just like he had wiped away the wine. Good girl, he whispered. Then his eyes darkened. His voice dropped an octave, turning rough and dangerous. But listen to me closely, Elena. Do not ever kneel before me like a slave. He leaned closer, his lips brushing mine, sending a jolt of electricity through my terrified body. Unless we are in bed, now stand up and sign the contract, or your father's finger will be delivered to you in a gift box by sunrise. The pen felt heavy in my hand like it was made of lead. The paper rustled as I signed my name, Elena Rossi. With that ink, I signed away my freedom. Dante picked up the contract, blew on the wet ink, and slid it into a drawer. His demeanor changed instantly. The cold negotiator was gone, replaced by something even more unsettling, the possessive owner. I need to go home, I said, my voice hollow. I need to get my things, and I need to see my dad. You said he would be released. He has been returned to his apartment, Dante said, checking his watch. Enzo will drive you. Pack what you need. Do not try to run. Enzo sees everything. I am not stupid, I muttered. Good. The ride back to Queens was a blur. When the Rolls-Royce pulled up to my crumbling apartment building, it looked like a spaceship that had landed in a landfill. Enzo got out and opened my door. I will come up with you, miss, he rumbled. I can pack my own underwear, thanks, I snapped, trying to hold on to a shred of dignity. Boss's orders, Enzo said simply, blocking my path until I walked toward the entrance. We climbed the 4 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken since 1999. The smell of cabbage and stale cigarettes filled the hallway. When we reached apartment 4B, my heart stopped. The door was not closed, it was hanging off its hinges. The wood was splintered around the lock. Dad, I called out, panic surging again. I pushed past the broken door and ran inside. The apartment was destroyed. The meager furniture we owned was smashed. The cheap TV was shattered. My mattress had been slashed open, stuffing scattered everywhere like snow. But it was the wall that made me gasp. Spray painted in bright, angry red letters across the living room wall was a message. Whore, you dared to embarrass me. Brandon, this was his tantrum. Because I hadn't let him buy me, because Dante had humiliated him. Clear the room, Enzo said sharply, drawing a handgun from inside his jacket. His relaxed demeanor vanished instantly. Suddenly, a noise came from my bedroom. 2 men lunged out. They were not professional soldiers like Enzo. They were street thugs, wearing hoodies and holding baseball bats. Brandon's hired muscle. Grab the bitch, one of them yelled. They charged at me. I screamed and scrambled backward, tripping over a broken chair. But they never reached me. Enzo moved with terrifying speed for a man of his size. He stepped in front of me, catching the first baseball bat with his forearm as if it were a twig. He punched the attacker in the throat. A sickening crunch echoed in the room. The man dropped, gasping for air. The second man hesitated, then swung his bat wildly. Enzo ducked, swept the man's legs, and stomped on his wrist when he hit the floor. The sound of snapping bone was loud and wet. Ah! The thug screamed. But in the chaos, the first man, still choking on the floor, grabbed a heavy glass beer bottle lying near him. With a desperate lunge, he threw it. Miss, look out! Enzo shouted. I turned too late. The heavy glass bottle smashed into my forehead. Pain exploded behind my eyes. White light flashed in my vision. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my head. When I pulled it away, my fingers were coated in thick, warm blood. The world spun, my knees buckled, and I hit the floor hard. Through the ringing in my ears, I saw Enzo finish off the attackers with ruthless efficiency. Then he was at my side, his scarred face looking genuinely worried. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and put it on speaker as he pressed a cloth to my bleeding head. Report! Dante's voice came through the phone, sharp, impatient. We have a problem, boss, Enzo said, his voice grim. Ambush. 2 hostiles. Neutralized. But what? The silence on the other end was heavy. Miss Elena is hit, head wound, bleeding. Who sent them? Dante's voice was deadly quiet now. A whisper that sounded like a bomb about to detonate. Enzo looked at the red graffiti on the wall. Vane. It was Brandon Vane's men. Is she conscious? Barely. I lay there on the dirty floor, blood trickling into my eye, listening to the conversation. Put the phone near her. Enzo held the phone to my ear. Elena? Dante's voice was different. The mockery was gone. The coldness was gone. It was replaced by a raw, guttural fury that made the hair on my arms stand up. Can you hear me? Yes, I whispered, tears mixing with the blood. It hurts. I am coming, he swore. Enzo, get her out of there. If she loses consciousness, you answer to me. Understood. And Enzo? Yes, boss. Keep those 2 men alive. I want to start with them before I find Vane. The line went dead. I realized then, lying in the wreckage of my old life, that escaping Dante did not mean safety. The world outside was full of hungry wolves like Brandon. But Dante was the apex predator. He was the lion. I had to choose. Be eaten by the wolves or seek shelter in the lion's den. If you were me, what would you do? Run now while the chaos unfolds, or go back to the man who promised to burn the world down for a scratch on my face? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And please, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. You do not want to miss what happens when the devil sees his property damaged. Part next is going to be a bloodbath. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars were still distant wails in the night, but my world had narrowed down to the sterile white interior of the Rolls-Royce. Enzo had helped me into the passenger seat, his movements careful, apologetic even, but I barely registered his presence. My eyes were fixed on the man in the driver's seat. Dante. He was not looking at me. His knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, the leather creaking under the pressure. His jaw was set so hard I thought his teeth might shatter. He radiated a cold, terrifying fury that sucked the air out of the car. It was not the loud, explosive anger of Brandon. It was the silent, suffocating pressure of the deep ocean before a tsunami. He did not drive us back to the penthouse. He drove fast, weaving through the traffic with lethal precision, heading away from the city lights and toward the industrial district. "Open the glove box," he said. His voice was devoid of emotion. I obeyed, my hands shaking. Inside was a white first aid kit. Dante pulled the car over onto the shoulder of a deserted road under a flickering street lamp. He killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. He turned to me. For the first time since the attack, he looked at me. His gray eyes swept over my face, lingering on the blood drying on my forehead. He took the kit from my hands. He opened an antiseptic wipe, the smell of alcohol filling the small space, stinging my nose. "This will hurt," he warned softly. He leaned in. I flinched, expecting roughness, but his touch was feather light. His large, calloused fingers that I knew could snap a man's neck, held my chin with a tenderness that made my chest ache. He dabbed at the cut on my forehead. I hissed in pain. "I know," he murmured, his eyes never leaving the wound. "I know." He cleaned the blood away with methodical focus. He applied a butterfly bandage, his movements precise. When he finished, he did not pull away. He cupped my face in his hand, his thumb stroking my cheekbone. "I made a mistake," Dante said, his voice low and rough. "I thought you would be safe for 1 hour. I was wrong." "It is not your fault," I whispered. "It was Brandon." "No," Dante corrected me, his eyes hardening into steel. "It is my fault. Because I let a worm like Brandon Vane breathe air on the same planet as you after he disrespected you. I will correct that error tonight." He started the car again. We arrived at the docks 20 minutes later. The smell of salt water, rust, and rotting fish hung heavy in the air. We stopped in front of a massive, abandoned warehouse. "Come," Dante said. I followed him. My legs felt like lead. Enzo was already there, standing by the metal sliding door. He nodded to Dante and pulled the door open. The screech of metal on metal echoed in the night. I walked inside and the sight made me freeze. Suspended from the ceiling by heavy chains were 3 figures. 2 of them were the thugs who had attacked me in my apartment. They were unconscious, swaying slightly. In the center was Brandon Vane. He was awake. He was hanging upside down. His expensive suit was torn, his face bruised and swollen. A piece of duct tape covered his mouth, muffling his terrified screams. "You see, Elena?" Dante walked around Brandon like a shark circling bait. "This is what happens." Dante walked over to a metal table. He picked up a sleek black handgun. He walked back to me and held it out. "Take it," he ordered. "What?" I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, I have never held a gun." "Take it." I reached out and took the weapon. It was heavier than I expected. Cold. The metal bit into my palm. "The safety is on," Dante said. "I just want you to feel the weight of it. This is power, Elena. The world out there does not respect kindness. It does not respect the law. It respects this. You were hurt because you were weak, because you thought you could handle monsters with polite words." He took the gun back from my trembling hands. He tucked it into the waistband of his trousers. Then he turned to Brandon. He reached up and ripped the duct tape off Brandon's mouth. "Please!" Brandon shrieked, his voice cracking. "Mr. Moretti! I am sorry. I did not mean to. She is just a waitress. I will pay you. My father will pay you double whatever she is worth." Dante sighed. He looked at me. "He still thinks you are something to be bought." Dante grabbed a metal pipe from the table. He did not yell. He did not make a speech. He simply swung. Crack! The sound was wet and sickening. Brandon screamed. A sound so high-pitched it did not sound human. Dante had shattered Brandon's right arm, the arm that had thrown the wine, the arm that had ordered the attack on my home. I gasped, covering my mouth, turning away. Tears pricked my eyes. It was brutal. It was barbaric. "Look at him!" Dante roared. He grabbed my shoulders and spun me back around, forcing me to face the carnage. "Do not look away, Elena. You need to see this. You need to understand where you are now. This is the price. This is the cost of touching what belongs to Moretti." Brandon was sobbing, swinging helplessly, his broken arm dangling at an unnatural angle. "He will live," Dante said, tossing the pipe aside. "But he will never use that hand again, and every time he looks at it, he will remember you." Dante reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small black velvet box. He opened it. Inside sat a ring. But it was not a normal engagement ring. It was a black diamond, large and jagged, set in dark platinum. It looked like a piece of the night sky solidified. "Give me your hand." I extended my left hand. It was shaking violently. Dante slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. I looked at the ring, then at Brandon moaning in agony, then up at Dante. The blood, the violence, the cold warehouse. This was my engagement party. I had stepped across a line and the bridge behind me had burned down. Dante stepped closer. He leaned down and pressed his lips to the bandage on my forehead. A kiss so gentle it made my knees weak. "This wound is my fault because I let you leave my sight," he whispered against my skin. "From this moment on, you will never step out of my shadow again. Let us go home, wife." Sunlight hit my eyelids like a physical blow. I groaned and rolled over, burying my face in a pillow that smelled of sandalwood and expensive tobacco. Dante. For a split second, I thought I was back in my lumpy bed in Queens. Then the events of last night came rushing back. The wine, the contract, the blood, the warehouse, the ring. I shot up in bed. I was in a room the size of my entire old apartment. The walls were glass, overlooking Central Park. The bed I was in was massive, covered in gray silk sheets. I was alone. I looked at my left hand. The black diamond glittered darkly in the morning sun. It was real. I was trapped. The door to the bedroom opened. I pulled the sheets up to my chin instinctively. A woman walked in. She was in her 50s, wearing a severe black uniform. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun that pulled at the skin of her face. She held a stack of clothes. "Good morning, Miss Rossi," she said. Her accent was Italian, thick and sharp. She did not smile. Her eyes scanned me with undisguised disdain. "I am Sophia, the housekeeper." "Hi," I croaked. Where is Dante?" "Mr. Moretti is in the dining room," Sophia said stiffly. She dropped the clothes onto the foot of the bed. It was a silk robe and lingerie that looked far too expensive for me to touch. "You have 1 hour to be ready. Mr. Moretti does not like to wait." I do not have any clothes," I said. "My things were destroyed." "A team is waiting outside," Sophia said, turning on her heel. "They will fix this." She gestured vaguely at my messy hair and bruised face. "Do not be late." She left. 10 seconds later, the room was invaded. 3 women and 2 men marched in carrying cases of makeup, hair tools, and garment bags. They did not introduce themselves. They did not ask me what I wanted. They went to work on me like I was a mannequin. "Hair needs to be straight," one muttered, yanking a brush through my tangles. "Boss hates frizz." "Cover the bruise," another commanded, dabbing cold concealer onto my forehead. "And red nails, classic Moretti red." I sat in front of the mirror, watching Elena Rossi disappear. The tired waitress with the messy bun and the worry lines vanished. In her place sat a stranger. Sleek black hair that fell like a curtain of silk. Eyes lined in sharp kohl, lips painted a deep blood red. I looked dangerous. I looked expensive. I looked like I belonged to him. Exactly 1 hour later, I walked out to the dining room. Dante sat at the head of a long mahogany table. He was wearing a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal his tattooed forearms. He was reading a newspaper. A cup of espresso sat to his right. And to his left, sitting on the placemat next to a silver fork, was a handgun. It sat there as casually as a piece of cutlery. I stopped in the doorway. Dante lowered the paper. His eyes swept over me, taking in the silk dress the stylists had put me in, the hair, the makeup. He did not smile. He did not tell me I was beautiful. "Adequate," he said, "enough to fool them." I walked over and sat in the chair to his right. My heart was pounding. "Eat," he said, gesturing to a plate of fruit and toast. "I'm not hungry," I said. "I did not ask if you were hungry. I told you to eat. You need strength." I picked up a piece of melon with a shaking hand. Dante reached under the table and pulled out a thick file folder. He slid it across the polished wood toward me. "Study this," he ordered. "Memorize every face, every name, every vice. I opened the folder. The first page was a photo of a fat, greasy-looking man with a cruel smile. Anthony Russo, Dante said, his voice dripping with venom. The head of the snake. He is the one you need to charm tonight. Tonight? I choked on the fruit. The gala, Dante said. It is a charity event for the Children's Hospital, but really it is a peace summit. The Russos will be there. You will be introduced as my fiancé. He leaned forward. The air in the room grew heavy. Listen to me, Elena. One mistake, one slip up, one moment where you look at me with fear instead of love, and they will smell blood. If they smell blood, they attack. If I die, the protection on your father ends. I stared at the gun on the table. So I have to pretend to be in love with the man who kidnapped me? I asked bitterly. Yes, Dante said, picking up his espresso. And you have to make them believe it. You have to make Anthony Russo jealous that he did not get you first. He stood up, walking behind my chair. He placed his hands on my shoulders. His thumbs pressed into the sensitive spot at the base of my neck, right over my pulse. Can you do that, little bird? Can you play the role of the devil's wife? The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a sea of gold and crystal, but all I saw were potential threats. I stepped out of the limousine, my hand gripping Dante's forearm so tight my nails must have been digging into his suit. I was wearing red, a blood-red gown that clung to every curve of my body like a second skin. It had a slit that went all the way up to my thigh and a back that plunged dangerously low. It was a dress designed to distract, a weapon made of silk. Head up, Dante whispered as we approached the entrance. Shoulders back. You are a queen tonight. Act like it. The heavy doors opened. Hundreds of heads turned. The chatter died down instantly. It was the same reaction as the night before, but amplified. Flashbulbs popped, blinding me. I flinched. Dante's arm slid around my waist, pulling me flush against his side. His heat seeped into me. Smile, he murmured. Look at me like I'm the only man in the room. I looked up at him. For a second, I did not have to pretend. In this tuxedo, with his dark hair perfectly styled and that dangerous glint in his eyes, he was breathtaking, terrifying, but breathtaking. We moved through the crowd. Men nodded respectfully. Women glared with envy. Then the crowd parted. A man walked toward us. I recognized him from the dossier, Anthony Russo. He was shorter than Dante, wider, with a face that looked like melting wax. His eyes were small and black, roving over my body with disgusting familiarity. Dante! Russo boomed, spreading his arms. So good to see you. And who is this stunning creature? This is Elena, Dante said, his voice cool and polite, but I felt the tension in his muscles. My fiancé. Fiancé? Russo raised a thick eyebrow. I did not know you were settling down. I thought you were saving yourself for family arrangements. Love is unpredictable, Anthony, Dante said dryly. Russo stepped closer. He took my hand and brought it to his wet lips. He held it a second too long. Charmed, my dear. You know, a flower like you looks fragile next to a stone like Dante. If you ever get cold, the Russo family is known for its warmth. It was a blatant insult, a proposition right in front of Dante's face. I froze. Dante moved. He pulled me back, stepping between me and Russo. His shoulder blocked Russo's view of me completely. She runs hot, Dante said, his voice dropping to a growl. And she only burns for me. Now excuse us, our song is playing. Dante grabbed my hand and dragged me onto the dance floor. The orchestra began to play a tango, sharp, passionate, violent. Dante spun me around, his hand firm on the small of my back. We moved, step, slide, turn. My leg hooked around his. Our bodies collided and pulled apart. He wants to kill you, I whispered, breathless. He wants to kill us both, Dante corrected, dipping me low. The blood rushed to my head. There are 3 snipers on the balcony. They are aiming at the back of my skull right now. My eyes widened in panic. I started to look up. Do not look, Dante hissed, pulling me back up, our chests crashing together. Keep your eyes on me. Smile, Elena. Laugh. Make them think you are having the time of your life. I forced a laugh. It sounded brittle. I hate you. Good. Dante smirked, spinning me again. Hate is passion. Use it. We moved across the floor, a blur of black and red. The tension between us was electric. Every touch felt like a brand. I was terrified, yes, but the adrenaline was making my blood sing. I felt alive in a way I never had carrying trays of champagne. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A waiter. He was moving too fast. He was not looking at the guests. He was looking at Dante's exposed back. He reached into his jacket, a glint of silver. "Dante!" I gasped. Dante did not turn. He reacted with supernatural speed. He spun me, a violent, beautiful twirl. As I spun, he used the momentum to pivot his own body. The waiter lunged, a knife flashing toward where Dante's kidney had been a second ago. Dante caught the man's wrist in midair. With his other hand, the hand that had just been caressing my waist, Dante produced a small, double-edged dagger from his sleeve. It happened in the blink of an eye. Dante drove the dagger upward under the waiter's ribcage. The man's eyes went wide. He gasped, but the sound was drowned out by the crescendo of the music. Dante held him up for a second, looking into his dying eyes. Then he let go. The waiter crumpled to the floor. "Keep dancing," Dante ordered me. He grabbed me and spun me away from the body. Two of Dante's guards appeared out of nowhere. They picked up the waiter, who looked like he had just fainted to the untrained eye, and dragged him out the side door. The music did not stop. The guests did not notice. They were too busy watching the beautiful couple dancing the tango. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I had just watched him kill a man, and he had not missed a beat. The song ended. Dante dipped me one last time, his face inches from mine. "You did well," he breathed, his pupils dilated. The applause broke out. That night, in a dress red as blood, I realized I was dancing with the Grim Reaper himself. But the terrifying truth was, his arms felt like the safest place on earth. If you are still listening to this, please help me out. Comment the keywords "red dress" down below so I know there are still friends walking this dangerous path with me. Your presence is the only thing keeping me sane enough to tell the rest of this story. Dante pulled me off the dance floor, but we did not go back to the table. He led me through a pair of French doors onto a deserted balcony. The cold night air hit my flushed skin. I thought he was going to debrief me, or yell at me for almost panicking. Instead, he pushed me back against the stone railing. His hands gripped my waist, bunching up the expensive silk of my dress. His eyes were wild, fueled by the adrenaline of the kill and the dance. "You were perfect," he growled. "So perfect that I am starting to want to rip this damn red dress off you right here and now." The heated moment on the balcony was shattered not by a kiss, but by the piercing wail of sirens and the frantic buzzing of Dante's phone. He did not even look at the screen. He grabbed my hand, his grip bruising, and dragged me toward the exit. We moved fast. We bypassed the lobby, exiting through a service door into the damp alleyway where the Rolls-Royce was waiting. Enzo was already behind the wheel, the engine purring like a caged beast. "Get in," Dante ordered, shoving me into the back seat before diving in after me. "Go," he barked at Enzo. The car squealed out of the alley, merging aggressively onto the main road. My heart was still racing from the dance, from the near kiss. But now, a different kind of adrenaline was flooding my veins, fear. "What is happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. Dante did not answer. He was checking the clip of his handgun, his face a mask of stone. He looked out the rear window. "We are being followed," he said calmly. As if on cue, blinding headlights flooded the rear interior of our car. A massive black truck slammed into our back bumper. "Bang!" I screamed as my head snapped forward. "Hold on!" Enzo shouted from the front. The truck hit us again. Metal screeched against metal. Then came the sound that haunts my nightmares. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. Machine gun fire. Bullets hammered against the armored glass of the Rolls-Royce. Spiderwebs of cracks appeared instantly on the window next to my face. I curled into a ball, covering my ears. "Get down!" Dante roared. He threw his heavy body over mine, pressing me into the leather seat. I could smell the gunpowder on him, mixed with his cologne. He was a human shield, warm and solid, protecting me from the hail of lead. "Enzo, get us out of here!" Dante yelled. "I am trying, boss. They have blocked the—" Glass shattered in the front seat. "Enzo!" I screamed. The car swerved violently. I felt the sickening sensation of gravity shifting. The world tilted sideways. We were rolling. The car flipped. Once. Twice. The sound was deafening. Crunching metal, shattering glass, and the groaning of the chassis. I was tossed around like a rag doll, held in place only by Dante's crushing grip and the seatbelt. Then silence. I was hanging upside down, smoke filled the cabin. My head was spinning and there was a sharp pain in my shoulder. Dante? I whispered, coughing. I am here. His voice was strained. Are you hurt? I do not think so. Good, we have to move. Dante unbuckled my seatbelt, catching me as I fell toward the roof of the overturned car. He kicked the back door open. It flew off its hinges, weakened by the crash. Out now. I crawled out onto the wet asphalt. The cold night air hit my face. We were on a deserted stretch of highway, bordered by thick woods. I turned back to help Dante. And then I saw it. A jagged piece of metal from the doorframe had pierced his side. His white shirt was already soaked in dark crimson blood. He groaned, clutching the wound, struggling to pull himself out of the wreckage. Enzo? I looked at the front seat. Enzo was slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious, blood dripping from his shoulder. Leave him, Dante gritted out, stumbling out of the car. He fell to one knee, breathing hard. He is alive, but we are the targets. Headlights appeared down the road. The truck was coming back. Men were jumping out, silhouetted against the high beams. They carried long rifles. Dante looked at them, then at me. His eyes were wild, desperate. Elena, he gasped, grabbing my arm. Run! What? Run into the woods. Hide. Do not come out until you see police. Go! He pushed me hard. I will hold them off. No, I cried, grabbing his hand. I am not leaving you. You are hurt. I am dying, he roared, his voice cracking. Go! Save yourself! This is your chance to be free of me! I looked at the woods. Darkness, safety, freedom. I could run. I could disappear. I could go back to my old life, to the days of worrying about rent and tips, far away from bullets and blood. I looked back at Dante, the monster who had kidnapped me, the man who had humiliated my tormentor, the man who had shielded me with his own body when the bullets started flying. He was trying to stand up, trying to raise his gun with a shaking hand to defend me, even as his life leaked out onto the pavement. One of the assassins was walking toward us, laughing. He raised a shotgun, aiming it at Dante's chest. I did not think. I did not weigh the pros and cons. My eyes fell on a handgun lying on the asphalt. Enzo's gun, which must have slid out during the crash. I dove for it. The asphalt scraped my knees raw. My fingers wrapped around the cold steel handle. It was heavy, so heavy. Hey! The assassin shouted, turning toward me. I raised the gun. My hands were shaking so hard I thought I would drop it. I remembered what Dante had said in the warehouse. This is power. I squeezed the trigger. Bang! The recoil nearly dislocated my shoulder. I missed the assassin's head, but the bullet tore through his shoulder. He screamed, dropping his shotgun and spinning around. Elena! Dante shouted. I didn't stop. I fired again and again, blindly, desperately. The assassin scrambled for cover behind the truck. The distraction bought us seconds, just seconds, but it was enough. A groan came from the front of the wrecked Rolls-Royce, Enzo. He was awake. He saw me firing. He saw the attackers. Despite his injury, the loyal soldier raised his own submachine gun through the shattered windshield. Bert, Bert, Bert. Enzo laid down a suppressing fire that forced the attackers to retreat into their truck. Sirens began to wail in the distance, real police this time. The attackers cursed, jumped back into their vehicle, and sped off into the night. The gun slipped from my fingers. Clatter. I fell to my knees, sobbing. The smell of gunpowder was choking me. Elena? I crawled over to Dante. He was lying on his back, his face pale as the moon. His hand was pressed over his side, blood seeping between his fingers. He looked up at me. His eyes were hazy, drifting in and out of consciousness, but there was a faint smile on his bloodless lips. You, he wheezed, you stayed. I shot him, I whispered, horrified. I shot a man. Dante reached up. His bloody hand cupped my cheek, leaving a smear of red on my skin. You missed your chance to run, little bird, he whispered, his voice fading like a dying ember. You could have been free, but now you are stuck with me forever. His hand fell from my face. His eyes rolled back. Dante! I screamed, shaking him. Dante! The silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. After the chaos of the highway, the safe house was a tomb. It was a cabin deep in the woods of upstate New York, hidden behind miles of pine trees and rain. For 3 days, it had rained. A relentless gray downpour that hammered against the roof and washed away the blood from my memories. but not from my soul. I sat in the armchair next to the bed, watching him. Dante was asleep or unconscious. The line was blurry. His chest rose and fell in a shallow, jagged rhythm. The private doctor Enzo had called, a man who asked no questions and accepted cash, had removed the metal shard and stitched him up, but the infection had set in. The fever was burning him alive. The room smelled of antiseptic, wet wood, and the metallic tang of illness. I stood up and walked to the bed. I wrung out a washcloth in a bowl of cold water. I dabbed his forehead. He flinched in his sleep, a moan escaping his cracked lips. "Shh," I whispered, brushing his damp hair back. "I am here." Why was I here? I could have left. Enzo was recovering in the other room, hopped up on painkillers. The door was unlocked. There were cars in the garage. But I stayed. I looked at his bare chest. It was a map of violence. Scars crisscrossed his skin, old knife wounds, bullet holes, burns. Every white line was a story of survival. He was a monster, yes, but lying here, stripped of his suits and his guns, he looked human. He looked lonely. "Mother," I froze. Dante turned his head restlessly on the pillow, his brow furrowed in pain. "Mother, do not go," he mumbled, his voice sounding like a lost child. My heart broke a little. The devil had a mother, and he missed her. Then his thrashing became more violent. He gripped the sheets with white-knuckled fists. "No!" he shouted hoarsely. "Get back! Do not touch her!" I leaned closer, trying to soothe him. "Dante, it is okay. You are safe." "Elena!" he gasped. I pulled back, shocked. He was dreaming about me. "She is mine," he growled in his fever, his eyes squeezing shut. "Do not touch her. I will kill you all. She is mine." A shiver ran down my spine. Even in his delirium, his possessiveness was the core of who he was. But it wasn't just ownership. There was desperation in his voice. Fear of losing me. I realized then that I wasn't just a prop to him. I wasn't just a shield against the Russo family. I was something else. Something he wanted to keep in a world that took everything away. And God help me, I wanted to be kept. I sat on the edge of the bed. Carefully, so as not to jar his wound, I lay down beside him. He was burning hot. I was cold. I placed my hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating strong and steady. Thump, thump, thump. "I am here, Dante," I whispered into the darkness. "I am not going anywhere." I took his hand. His large, rough hand that had hurt people, that had killed people, but had also wiped my tears and shielded me from bullets. Instinctively, even in his sleep, his fingers curled around mine. He squeezed tight. He pulled my hand to his chest and held it there like a lifeline. His breathing slowed, his thrashing stopped. He found peace in my touch. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain, and let myself drift off into a dreamless sleep beside the beast. Sunlight woke me. It was weak, filtering through the rain-soaked trees, but it was there. I blinked, disoriented. I was warm, heavy. I looked up. 2 gray eyes were watching me. Dante was awake. The fever had broken. His eyes were clear, though rimmed with exhaustion. He was lying on his side, watching me sleep with an intensity that made my breath hitch. He did not move. He did not speak. He just looked at me as if he was trying to memorize every pore on my face. "You are awake," I whispered, my voice raspy from sleep. "And you are in my bed," he replied. His voice was a low rumble, vibrating against my chest. I started to pull away, embarrassed. I was just checking your fever. You were delirious." His arm tightened around my waist, holding me in place. "Do not move." We lay there for a long moment, legs tangled, chests touching. The intimacy was suffocating and intoxicating at the same time. "Why didn't you run?" he asked. The question hung in the air. "Enzo would have caught me," I lied. "Enzo was unconscious for 12 hours, Dante said. "You had a car. You had money in my wallet. You could be in Canada by now. Why are you here, Elena?" I looked at his lips, then up to his eyes. I could not lie to him, not now. "Because you took a bullet for me," I said softly. Dante stared at me. A slow, wicked smile spread across his face. It wasn't the cruel smirk he used to wear. It was something real, something triumphant. "Wrong answer," he whispered. He reached up, his hand sliding into my hair, pulling my face down to his. "Why?" I breathed. "Because you love me," he said. "Admit it." Before I could protest, before I could deny the madness of it, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was a claiming. It was hungry and desperate and tasted of life. He kissed me like he wanted to devour my soul, and I let him. I opened my mouth. I wrapped my arms around his neck, careful of his wound, and I kissed him back with everything I had. I was no longer the victim, I was the accomplice. 3 weeks later, the elevator doors to the penthouse opened with a soft chime. I walked in first. Dante followed. He was moving a little slower than usual, favoring his left side, but he was back in his black suit, back to being the king. But something had changed. The air in the penthouse felt different. It wasn't a prison anymore. It was a fortress. And I wasn't a prisoner. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. New York City sparkled below us. It looked small from up here, conquerable. "Did you see the news?" Dante asked, pouring 2 glasses of scotch at the bar. "I did," I said, turning to face him. The news had been brief: a gas leak explosion at a private estate in the Hamptons. Tragically, Anthony Russo and his top lieutenants had perished in the fire. It was a lie, of course. A clean, efficient lie. Dante had wiped them off the map. There was no one left to threaten us, no one left to demand a marriage alliance. Dante walked over to me. He handed me a glass of amber liquid. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the glass coffee table between us. "What is this?" I asked, looking at the paper. "Read it." I picked it up. It was the contract, the one I had signed to save my father's fingers. "It is void," Dante said. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Your father's debt has been paid in full. I had him moved to a retirement community in Florida. Sunshine, golf, security guards who will break the legs of anyone who offers him a deck of cards." My heart pounded. "And the marriage clause?" "Cancelled," Dante said. He turned to look at me. His face was unreadable, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Fear? No, Dante Moretti didn't fear. Uncertainty. "You are free, Elena," he said. His voice was devoid of inflection. "The door is open. Enzo is downstairs. He will drive you wherever you want to go. You can go back to law school. You can find a nice, normal man who does not have bullets in his side." He turned his back to me. He walked toward the window, looking out at his kingdom. His hand holding the glass trembled slightly. Just a tiny tremor. It was the loudest scream of love he could have given. He was letting me go. He was breaking his own heart to give me a choice. I looked at the contract in my hand. I looked at the signature of the frightened girl I used to be. Elena Rossi. I thought about my old life. The tips, the sore feet, the constant fear of poverty, the loneliness. Then I looked at the man standing by the window. The monster who killed for me. The man who whispered my name in his sleep. The man who made me feel more powerful than any law degree ever could. Running meant safety, staying meant danger. But running meant emptiness, staying meant fire. I walked over to the marble side table where a silver lighter lay. Click. The flame flared up. Dante heard the sound. He stiffened, but he didn't turn around. I held the flame to the corner of the contract. The paper curled and blackened. The fire ate the words. It ate the debt. It ate the lies. It ate Elena Rossi, the victim. I dropped the burning paper into a crystal ashtray and watched it turn to ash. "Elena?" Dante turned around slowly. I walked up to him. I stopped inches from his chest. I could feel his heat. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady and strong. Dante stared at the ashes, then at me. "You could have had a normal life." "I do not want normal," I said. "I want you." I reached out and took the glass of scotch from his hand. I brought it to my lips and drained it in one swallow. The alcohol burned my throat, a pleasant fire. "Unless," I challenged him, looking deep into his gray eyes, "you want to give me back my heart? Because you stole it, Dante, and I am not leaving without it." Dante let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks. A low, dark chuckle rumbled in his chest. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated happiness. He grabbed me by the waist and lifted me off the ground effortlessly. I wrapped my legs around him, burying my hands in his hair. "It is too late for regrets, Mrs. Moretti," he growled against my lips. "I never regret," I whispered back. He carried me toward the bedroom, leaving the ashes of our contract behind. They laughed at me when I spilled wine on my dress. They mocked me when I rejected a boy. But look at me now. I am holding the heart of the devil in my hands, and he is holding mine. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, please like and subscribe. You never know. Dante might have a brother who needs a story too.